We have the Scarlatellas here. Thank you so much for coming in. Tina and Anthony, how are y'all doing?
Good, thank you.
Doing good.
I don't know if you know this, but your family's story is one of the reasons why we started this podcast.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, we were at an Acts retreat, and Anthony, I heard your story, and it moved me a lot. It was right before the pandemic. It was the last Acts retreat at St. Faustina before the pandemic. And when we got locked down and everything, you know, you spend time reflecting and thinking and praying, and Herm was trying to get me to start a podcast, and I remembered your story, and I said, you know, we need to get more of a connection with the other families in the parish because we're all, you know, separated. I said people need to hear stories like this. So yeah, y'all's story is one of the reasons why we have this podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
I don't think I've ever told you. I've never told you that, right?
No.
That's very nice.
Now y'all have you been with St. Faustina since the beginning,
Um,
or just early on?
Early on.
We were still in the warehouse.
No,
Hubenac.
Hubenac.
Hubenac. Okay.
Yes, we attended a few mass at Hubenac, but at the time we were still at St. John Vianney.
Were you there since you were young, both of y'all?
No, we were attending St. Teresa before, but we had gone to St. John Vianney. It was a little closer, and I think it just worked better with the kids because they were in CCE.
Okay.
And so when we came to St. Faustina at Hubenac, they didn't have, it was all at home. And so we were
early on, yeah.
Yeah, and Tina was volunteering at St. John Vianney, and then so was I. She was with the younger kids, and I was with the older kids.
Did you both grow up Catholic?
I grew up Catholic. Very cradle Catholic, families Catholic. Yeah.
No, I did not grow up Catholic.
You didn't grow up Catholic. So Italian, but not Italian, right?
Yes,
But not,
Scarlatella is Italian.
or culturally. Was it culturally Catholic?
Well, we would attend Mass during Christmas or maybe Easter once in a great while. But normally, it was only at the behest of like my grandmother on my father's side. But we didn't go to church. We didn't go to Mass.
So vastly different backgrounds.
Yes. I was a Catholic, and he was not. What did you call yourself?
Well, we had gone to the Baptist church, but then I think when we were dating, I was spiritual.
Okay. So you're a free agent.
I was. That was.
Did you try out a whole bunch of other, denominations?
No, I mean, my family was attending the Church of Christ, and my mother was attending the Baptist church, and so I would just go and be a part when I was with them. When I was alone, it was when I didn't go.
It was like, yeah, got other things to do. That typical thing, yeah.
Typical young adult.
Yeah, I was at that point as well. How about you, Tina? Were you devout from the beginning?
Yes, I lived at the church, basically. My parents were both involved. They started the mothers group. My dad was part of the parish council. Almost every day we were at the church, which was Sacred Heart Co-Cathedral at the time. Weekends, weekdays. And so growing up, I was always told I had to marry a Vietnamese Catholic.
Oh, it had to be Vietnamese Catholic.
It has to be Vietnamese Catholic because my parents did not speak English. So to marry a Vietnamese Catholic would be easier for them to communicate. So I tried that for a while, but I just did not find the right one. And then one day I'm like, no, I'm just going to find someone that loves God and that will love me. And I think as soon as I made that connection with just being in someone that loves God and loves me, then God introduced Anthony into my life, which he's not Vietnamese, he was not Catholic, and did not have most of the criteria that I would have selected, but it's how God works.
So completely the opposite end of the spectrum of what your parents were saying.
Yes, completely different spectrum. I honestly didn't like big nose people, and Anthony has big nose, but it's just interesting how God answers your prayers. You know, he doesn't give you what you want, but he gives you what you need.
How did y'all meet?
We worked together.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we worked together for a while, but our paths just never crossed. And then one day, he just kept coming to my office, you know, like, yeah, I was like, oh, you need help with something? Oh, you know, you left this somewhere. Oh, you know, so it just kind of.
So is that why you were interested in her? Is that why you were passing by the office a lot?
Well, I think at the time I was, I remember being invited to her office party or something at one of our locations. And I remember that she just made me feel special. I was, I guess, a representative of the division. And so she, you know, it was kind of like she was taking care of the party and she just kind of welcomed me. And I just remember, you know, how sparkly her eyes were and just how warm her smile was. And yes, then we got working on a project together. And then, yes, I was.
How did you react, Tina? Were you like, nope, doesn't fit the criteria of the parents, or?
The funny thing is I thought he was interested in a coworker. So I was trying to introduce him to my coworker. But they're like, no, he's not interested in her. He's interested in you. And so I think that's when we went on our first date. I invited him out to lunch. And I treated him to Quiznos. And so he was like surprised that I would pay on our first date. But that was my rule, is I pay on the first date.
And was it sparks right away?
Yes.
No.
Yes and no. So you did more chasing, Anthony, than Tina? Was that it, or?
I think I had to really chase him down.
Oh, really?
I did. I felt like I had to chase him down.
Really? And so you both are very involved in the church together. So how did that develop from where you were, Anthony, with, you know, just the Christmas and Easter background to getting to where we are now? How did that all come about? Did it happen while you were dating, or?
So when we started to date, we both agreed that religion, faith would be a big part of our cornerstone of our relationship. When we decided to get married, we were going to be open to him going to the Baptist church, and, you know, how I would go to the Baptist church with him and he would go to the Catholic church with me. But early on, it kind of sparked some kind of tension.
Okay.
There's a period of time where he was asking a lot of Catholic questions, and it came across very maybe condescending. Maybe I didn't fully understand how or what questions he was asking. It just came across very negative. And so that really put a strain on our relationship. And so we decided to go to, was it Engage Encounter? I think during one of our preparations for marriage, you know, we discussed that a little bit more. We decided that he wasn't going to convert to be a Catholic to get married in a Catholic church.
Really? At that point, huh?
Yeah. So at that point, when we planned our wedding, we had the full Mass offered to all of our guests. But to be united with Anthony, I decided that I was not going to receive communion at the wedding.
Oh, wow.
And so at the time, I did not realize the sacrifice that I was making. My goal was just to be united with Anthony. And my main thing was the sacrament of marriage was the most important sacrament for that day. And that I could receive this, you know, sacrament of communion the next day. I think that was maybe the starting point of Anthony's conversion, because he saw how much I cried on the wedding day.
Really?
And I didn't realize how much it impacted me until the actual wedding, you know, like everyone's around you is receiving Jesus and you're not able to. But I wanted to make sure that I was united with him. And I think God bless us with that decision because eventually Anthony decided that he was going to enter the church.
What was going through your mind? So was she crying there at the ceremony itself?
Yes, we were kneeling, I guess at the altar at the stairs, and all around us, folks were coming up for Eucharist, for communion, and I was looking at her, and she was weeping. Tears were just coming down, and it was our wedding day, and I saw that. I saw her crying. I saw her tears, and I think that moved me at that time. I mean, I was very, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. It was our wedding day, our happy
right.
day.
Yeah.
And then she's there, and so I didn't understand what I had asked her to do at that, because we had talked about it, and that was kind of one of the things I had asked her, and then she did make that decision.
In your mind, was it still just bread? In your mind?
Yes, I think because in growing up, it was kind of a remembrance thing. And so, is it the true body and blood, the presence?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I did not.
You did not. It was just bread to you at that time.
Yes,
you didn't recognize what it really was.
No, I did not.
So how did that move on? Did you have a conversation on your honeymoon or something? Or?
No, we went on marriage life, and then 8 months into our marriage, it was rocky. And so we decided to go to marriage encounter. And so most people don't go to marriage encounter, within 8 months of your marriage. But I knew that I wanted to handle any conflicts early on. So at the marriage encounter weekend, we met a priest, and he talked to us extensively about the process of RCIA. Growing up, I assumed that if you join RCIA, you've made the commitment to become a Catholic. Mm-hmm. At the retreat, I learned that you can join RCIA just to learn more about the Catholic faith, mm-hmm. and you can make the decision at a later time to join the church.
So no pressure.
It was no pressure, yes. And so I think that was kind of like another eye-opener for myself. I mean, I was a cradle Catholic. I never understood that. I just thought RCIA equals
you're on the path,
Yeah, you're becoming a Catholic. So I think that really helped us, and he started to attend the classes, the sessions, and I would join him when I could. Mm-hmm. And so I think that helped with our communication of when he was asking questions about the faith. I didn't feel like he was belittling me for not being able to defend the faith or answer the questions in a way that he would understand.
And there were people who are better equipped, who are trained in it, who've done it for years, who could answer those questions.
Yes. Well, as a cradle Catholic, you learn through traditions. Mm-hmm. You learn through living, like living the faith. Yes. And so I did not know scripture, verses off the top of my head. I did not have all the answers. So it was very frustrating for me because then sometimes I felt like maybe I'm not a good Catholic for not, and he never experienced the tradition of, going to church, going to mass and doing things the way, and
yes.
Part of faith is just believing without seeing, like that's what I knew. And so, but it helped us. Like he was able to understand that we don't worship Mother Mary, we honor her because she's the mother of Jesus. And just because we go to a priest to confess, that doesn't mean that we're not having a relationship with Jesus directly. Mm-hmm. Jesus is using the priest to give us the audio of you are forgiven. Mm-hmm. And so I think once we were able to understand that, then our marriage got a little bit better because it wasn't why are you attacking my faith?
Were those the major issues for you, Anthony? The Mary and confession? Were those the major points for you?
Well, growing up or attending the Baptist church, those were the things that I always came up as like questions about the Catholic doctrine, doctrine, like sola scriptura, sola fide, all that. And so when we attended the RCIA, those folks like Linda Kanaki and the team at St. Teresa were well equipped, because what happened was I would ask her a question and I would tend to quote the scripture, and because that's what was taught in the Baptist church, they kind of like go and say, oh, here's Romans, you have to quote this particular verse, here's this particular
Yes.
And so when I did that her response, she couldn't do the same. But these folks in the RCIA program, they did know that stuff. And so they helped me realize the fullness of the truth. And so Mother Mary was one of the questions that came up. Because from a non-Catholic, seeing the church and seeing how they pray that the Hail Mary, it looks like, at least from that time in my life, that that they were worshiping Mary. But praying to Mary, honoring Mary, because there is that connection that the Catholic faith really has with the eternal, that as a non-Catholic, you don't realize that there is this real connection with eternity and the heavens. All the souls that have gone before us, they're reaching out to us. The saints, they're all praying for us, and we have that true connection that I didn't know, and I think the good folks at St. Teresa helped me see that.
How long did it take you to really make that connection? Was it a long process, or?
It was a long time, because I think it was like a year and a half I was going to the RCIA program.
Well, this is where God's miracle works, right? So almost about the same time where Anthony was entering RCIA, we found out that we could not have kids. And so dealing with that struggle, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's understandable. Yeah.
Dealing with that struggle, it was comforting that Anthony was going through the RCA process, because we started the adoption process. We were going to classes, and that was always my concern, is when we have kids, how am I going to teach the kids the Catholic faith if it's just me, Catholic, and Anthony's not? So that was a concern, but by God's grace, he entered the Catholic Church about the same time that we finalized the 1.5 year process that we had the kids, as we were fostering them, the struggle of us, if we were going to fight to adopt them. And then, I think God was with us the entire time. So it was like the adoption process and Anthony's conversion all kind of coincide with each other. And I think he entered the church when we celebrated Isabella's first birthday. So it was kind of neat to kind of have that journey be at the same time.
So you hadn't fully converted yet when you began that process, of adopting the kids. So, but you had agreed that you'd raise the kids Catholic.
So when we had gone through marriage prep with Father Miguel, one of the stipulations to getting married into the church was we would raise the children Catholic. And at that time, I wasn't strong in my faith as a Baptist and so to me at the time it didn't matter. I was like, sure, okay.
Sure, whatever, yeah.
and so yeah, sure. I didn't have a.
You didn't have a strong opinion either way.
No.
Okay.
I guess the opinion came later when we were talking about when they get older, I wanted them to have the choice. Like if, when they're done learning about all this and let's say they're 18, then they would have the choice. I'm opposed to that now.
I was going to say, how do you feel about that now?
Well, they still have a choice when they're confirmed.
Yes,
They have to make that choice and say the words.
Yes, definitely. But it helps to have both parents kind of be united.
Oh, yeah.
Especially during our teenage years. It's very important to have us being united, especially in our faith. And it's interesting that the roles are reversed now. Before, I was the Catholic, and now I'm a secondary Catholic, where Anthony is the Catholic, So it's just, all I could say is it's amazing how God, plans out things for us. I think when I needed to be, I was the strong Catholic spearhead, and now Anthony is. He is the head of the household, and he guides us. There are some days where I'm like, I don't want to go to church. And he's like, you have to go to church. I'm like, okay, But it's been really nice to see him on fire. We were at Mass one day, and the men's came back from an Acts retreat. And he sat there, and he heard the men sing. And I looked at him. I'm like, are you interested? He's like, I don't know, maybe, I guess, And so I just signed him up. I signed him up.
St. Faustina?
This was at St.
Also,
Faustina.
that was my group then.
Yeah. So
with Antonio and
Yeah. So I signed him up for the men's Acts retreat, and I told him about it. He was like, "Oh, I can't take off work." I'm like, "Yeah, just."
I said the same thing.
Yeah. So I'm like, "You just got to do it. There's never going to be a good time." And so I just remember hearing him talk about how he wanted that. When he saw the men up there singing and just kind of the fellowship. And I wanted that for Anthony. And he wanted that, but he just didn't know how to do it. And so I just kind of kicked him in. I'm like, hey, I signed you up and you're going. And so it's been really neat. That really set the fire in him. And I think every position that he could volunteer at church, he's volunteering, from EM, he's on the pastoral council.
So you said that she had just turned 1 when you had completed the adoption process. How did that start? What decision made you go to?
It wasn't the adoption because she was older. That was.
Oh, it was still the fostering process.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. So when we found out that we couldn't have kids, and then I started to research the adoption, we had to be married 2 years before we could become eligible.
Okay.
We were 2 months shy of that, but they allowed us to attend the classes because when we finished the class, we would technically be finished with our 2 years. And so, so we attended class in October, and by January, we got that phone call. They're like, we have 3 little angels that needs home. And I looked at Anthony, and I'm like, well, no, I didn't look at him, but I called him. I'm like, hey, you know how you wanted a girl, and then you wanted a boy, and then you wanted a girl? I'm like, that's what they're calling us for, And so they called us, and they're like, we have a girl, a boy, a girl sibling that needs a home. They have special needs. They have medical needs. And, we decided that we were going to say yes to God and to. So we said yes, and then they called us and they're like, "No, never mind."
What?
I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "No, they're already in my heart," and so we had to fight to get them. And then a month later, they entered our home.
Wow, and you hadn't met them yet?
No, we didn't know anything about them besides their name and their ages and the needs that they would need.
Wow.
And so, so at the time, the oldest was 3.5. Our son was just turned 2, and the baby was 7 months old.
Let's rewind just a little bit, Anthony. Let me ask you a question, because you said that you hadn't fully converted yet when you considered, adopting or fostering. At any point, did any thought come into your head about, okay, well, maybe this marriage isn't for me because, you're not as strong in your faith?
I think when we were trying to have children, and I don't think that I had that thought, because in my heart, in my mind, marriage was very important. So having that doubt wasn't there. I was committed to being married, and that's because I though I didn't have that that religious foundation. Both my grandmother and my mother struggled in their marriage, in their life, and so I didn't want that. And so, being married, I was committed, and we struggled with having children. Tina did the like she went to the doctor. I went to the doctor, and ultimately, what happened was we took a walk around the block, and we decided that, you know what, we've talked about having children. We want children. We did talk about having 3 or more, or however many we were going to be blessed with, and we kind of remember that, hey, you know, we can always adopt. I mean, because we don't want to do the other things that they have, because we weren't sure if those were acceptable or not.
Yes.
And then the danger that they could have. And so we decided that we were going to foster, and then we were going to learn, like we wanted a baby, and so we joined, or we did the fostering training and the adoption training. We worked through one of the locals, because to like adopt a kid, a baby, costs a lot of money, and at the time we were not wealthy enough to go, and so but we did do the training, and we did get the phone call, and I remember I was at the office, and she did call me, and we had planned for just one. We had I think we had one room set up at the house with furniture for a girl. We had gone.
So the one room was already in.
Yes, so because we had bought the white furniture with the purple and pink kind of flip thing, and we had it all set up. This was like for Christmas or January or something, and she called me, and I was in my office at the job, and she said, "I have some news." And like, well, you know, they're calling us, because I was thinking that they were calling us, and she said there were three, and I'm like, 3. and I think I reminded her, we just wanted one, right? We just wanted one. But she did say there were 3, and I could hear her across the phone line. I could hear that desire, and then for a moment there, I prayed, like, I was like, okay, I guess we're walking through this door. And yes, I think I was in that RCIA at the time. So
you had that quick doubt, but you, Tina, you were like, nope, we're gonna go with this, huh?
I just felt like God was just revealing his plans, because, you know, when we were dating, we talked about having a girl, and then a boy, and then a girl, because we didn't want the middle child to have middle child syndrome, because if he's the only boy, then he's the only boy, you know?
Yes.
And
we even named him.
Oh yeah, we had names for it. But also because I think we both studied child psychology. Me with child psychology, and then finding out that these 3 kids have special needs, and I felt like God was preparing us for these 3 kids. There were moments that I felt like maybe God was punishing me and not allowing me to have kids, because some of the choices I've made in the past. So that was kind of like a little bit of a doubt at some point. But then when God was lining things up, you know, God introduced Anthony. And even when we were dating, I kind of knew that we weren't going to be able to have kids, just because I knew what his medical background was, you know, as a child. He went through cancer and radiation and stuff like that. So in the back of my mind, I always knew that there's a possibility, but I was still hopeful, you know, so. And we definitely didn't want to do the IVF, because we wanted to make sure if it was our kids or none at all. You know, I didn't want to use another person's sperm and my egg, and, you know, we didn't want to do surrogate, you know, so and there's so many kids out there that needs homes, and so that's that's where our decision came through and to adopt.
Did you wrestle with that idea for a while? Like, am I being punished? Did you speak with a priest about it? Or?
I did. I definitely, because, I mean, I've made a lot of bad decisions, as a teenager, coming from a very strict parent, coming from parents that were divorced. I think I was just seeking attention and love in all the wrong places. And so, yeah, I mean, I did not respect a lot of the things that I did in the past. And so I did felt like God was punishing me, even though I know that's not his MO. Like, God doesn't do that. I struggle with that. And it was at a retreat where I went to confession with a priest and says, God has forgiven you already. Why haven't you forgiven yourself?
Oh.
I think that kind of opened the door to me accepting the blessings that God has prepared for me.
So you get thrown this in your lap, 3 kids with medical issues, special medical needs, and you run with it.
Yeah, she just ran with it.
So you had to, instead of just one room set up, huh? You had to.
Yeah, we went out and got a crib. We got a boys' room. We got him a bunk bed set. I mean, I think we had everything ready. And on that day, we're like, we don't have any food. So we ran out to Target that day to, I don't know what I was thinking. I picked up some Chef Boyardee canned food. So we pulled in right as CPS pulled in with the kids. And I just remember them entering in the moment they entered our house, it was like already in our hearts, like I could always remember what they were wearing and what they did. And Izzy was just a little butterball sitting in her car seat, and I was just so ready to pick her up. Joe came in with his sunglasses upside down, with his little curly hair. And Gabby had the beautiful curly pigtails, and when we showed them their room and they're like, my room, JoJo's bed, and they jumped on it. It was just it just felt so right. And yeah, it just felt like this is what God wanted for us. But that's beautiful. We're taking on kids, but I think I end up putting a lot of pressure on myself because these are someone else's kids that I'm responsible for now.
Yes.
And I hear people say, even if you give birth to your kids, they're not really your kids. God's giving them to you. But it was just the extra pressure of, okay, these parents entrusting their kids, and we have to make sure that we raise them right and that we protect them and guide them and give them love. And so those are always the struggle of any parent, right? But
yes.
More so for me as an adoptive mom, I feel like I have that extra pressure. Do you ever feel that way?
Do I feel the extra pressure? No, I think I have a lot of pressure just being their dad.
Now, you said that they have medical issues and medical needs. Was that a struggle? Was that a big challenge for y'all early on?
For me, no, because I think I was running on adrenaline.
Okay.
I loved them. So, multiple visits to the doctors, physical therapy, occupational therapy, medicine, whatever it is that I needed to do to get the kids in a healthy way, I did. Dentist appointment, doctor's appointments, play dates. I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to quit my job and be a full-time mom for them for a while, and that helped me connect with them and really just, I didn't know any better. These are my kids, so I do whatever I need to do.
Now, I have some friends that fostered, and the child was taken back to the biological parents. Was there any danger of that happening with y'all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
When we did the adoption, we stated that we want to adopt, foster to fully adopt. Somehow that didn't translate correctly in our file. So the kids that we have, they were not, the term is legally free for adoption.
Okay.
And so we actually had to have family visits with the biological family, and we had to take them to court and stuff like that. And so that did put a strain in our marriage. There was one point in our marriage where I wasn't sure if we were going to make it because I wanted to fight for the kids. And he was like, is this the right thing to do? Or do we fight for the kids? Or do we, return them? And so
to their biological family.
Yes, to the biological family. And I was like, I at the time, I felt like the biological family was not doing enough to fight for them. And so we can't just give up and let them be returned and then perpetually come back into the system.
Oh, yeah.
So that was just kind of like my mind.
That would be damaging to the children, having to go back into the...
To go back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we I guess during that process, we saw the lack of evidence that they were getting ready for the return of the children. And the father was the biological father was in jail, and the biological mom was barely making it to whatever she needed to do. She only prolonged the process. And so we had an opportunity to speak with her.
Oh, really?
And during the time, because we needed her to give up her rights.
Yes.
And so I remember during one of the court sessions, I had an opportunity to speak to her privately, to talk to her and tell her that, you can give these kids a gift, give them the opportunity to grow up in a loving home, be able to have opportunities that you'll never have.
That's always the struggle because, when you pray, you don't want to pray for anyone suffering. Like I could not pray, God, give me these kids. I think the whole time I was praying, let your will be done. Like if it was God's will for these kids to be returned to their biological family, which is ultimately the best place for the kids, if that's possible, then I wanted to be able to accept that. And if my part in helping them for however many months get them to a good point where they can be reunited, then I want to be able to accept that. And so I didn't dare to say, oh, I want the kids. Because for me, if I pray, oh, let me have the kids, that means I'm praying that she'll lose her kids, And so that was a little bit of a struggle to remind myself, just pray for God's wills to be done. And just do what I felt I had peace. Like if I exhausted all the efforts that we had, because we had to end up hiring a lawyer and putting financial restraints on our family. But we were willing to do that to make sure that we did everything we could to protect and help the kids to our full ability. And if the court deemed that the kids needed to be reunited, then we were going to accept that.
I can imagine that be a struggle. Like, is this God's will or my will? Me trying to impose my own will.
Yes, I think we were fighting. We were on the stairs of our house, and I was ready to sign divorce papers. I'm like, if you don't want to fight for the kids, this is it. I was like, but then calmly thinking, I'm like, I understand where he was coming from because we don't want to feel like we're stealing or snatching or because it can come across like that.
Yeah.
And so it was just asking people to be united with us in prayer for God's will to be done. And whatever obstacles that God faced, if it's his will, then we will overcome it.
I could see where you were coming from. Like, you don't want that guilt later on of thinking, did I just snatch somebody else's kids from them when they could have had that chance? I can see that. Yes.
I think that we were saying the same thing, but we were coming from two different perspectives. And yes, but it was evident that the biological mom wasn't doing what she needed to do, that needed to be done, because these three children had real needs that had to be addressed, and we were addressing them. Tina was taking the medicine serious, the doctor visits serious, because the youngest, she may have been blind, she may have never walked.
Really?
From what I read in the doctor's notes, and just the prognosis for her was not good. She didn't learn to walk until much later.
Wow.
She didn't crawl. She kind of just dragged or scooted. But yeah, it was. But I think just the love and the care that Tina put into the kids helped her recover to where she is now. I mean, you couldn't even tell.
Did you struggle at any point with forgiving the biological parents?
One of the things I had to do was testify during his trial. And at that moment, I remember that I was not angry. I was there just to provide the information that I knew from my standpoint.
The facts, just the facts.
Facts, yes. But we did receive a letter from him, and he asked for forgiveness. And I feel like it wasn't my place to forgive him. It's like, it's one of those blessing in disguise kind of deal. And I feel like God put pain and suffering so that we could have joy, So it's very unfortunate that the kids went through that. And it was unfortunate that their parents were young. And I do not feel like they were intentionally wanting to harm their kids. I'm 100% confident about that. People make mistakes. People make bad decisions. But the beauty is that they both acknowledged that they could not be the best parents for the kids at the time. And so they did relinquish their rights and ask us if we could care for their kids. And so at that moment, it was no longer an anger issue for me. Like, why did you do that? It was more of, okay, we will do our best to protect and love and care for your kids until you're ready to meet them again.
Was that long after that conversation you had with the mother, Anthony?
I think that the father had already signed the relinquishment papers.
At that point.
But it was...
it was harder for her to do that.
Yeah.
It was definitely harder. It was not an easy decision, but it was definitely a gift that she gave to the kids, because it could have been drawn out for a longer time. And who knows what the outcome could be, because we were already kind of like at our like breaking point. Emotionally, mentally, financially.
We were going to court all the time. It was draining because you're kind of stuck in this limbo, and we needed to have a resolution. What are we going to do? We've got to move forward. This constantly going and meeting you for 30 minutes. That way you could to see them, but you're really not engaged in their life. You're not doing what you're making $10 an hour working part-time. How are you going to provide for these kids? You don't drive, you don't have a car. What is your real plan? How are you going to do this? And we can do it. We have the ability to do that, to help these kids right now. And let's look for the best of these children. What can we do? And so yes, then she decided to relinquish her rights, and I think it was good for her because she was young, and hopefully she took that blessing, that opportunity, and hopefully she's in a better place.
Did you have any difficulty with the kids, and their attitude toward the adoption, or were they too young?
We go through cycles. And now we're in the teenage phase, so we're not quite sure. We can't be 100% sure. I'm sure. We've been very honest with the kids as far as they know that they're adopted. I know they have questions. I think the oldest daughter has some recollection. I think every child has some kind of story that they want to stick to or that they've made in their heads. And we try to check in with them and ask them if they have any questions. At some point they did ask questions and we provided answers. But we're not them. So it's kind of hard, even though we tell them and we shower them with love and affection and structure and attention. We anticipate that they will have more questions, and we want to be as honest as possible, but at the same time, make sure that they're prepared and ready to receive the answers that they're asking. So,
do you live with like a fear of them all of a sudden one day saying, "I want to go back to my biological parents.
Absolutely. For me, absolutely. But if God's will, if that's what they need to heal, then I'm okay with that. Like, you have to be, yeah.
I think at some point they do need to address it. It will be a part of that. Those folks are a part of their lives, and they're going to have to address it as they get older. How soon they'll do that, I don't know. I think I did fear that the oldest was more wanting to do that early, but I think the older she's gotten, the less she seems interested. And so it's kind of a cycle, because I think the youngest one is a little bit more interested in it now. And so and I think our son seems to be the most distant from it, just talking to them. But they've all kind of gone through the same, like, where am I coming from? Where am I from? Who am I really? Kind of those kind of things. And so I try to remind them that, you are who you are. You are, our son, you're our daughter. This is where you live. Be grateful. You're my son, you're my daughter, you're Scarlatella. Yes, you have these other people from your past, and I encourage you to seek them out at some point in your life, because you'll have questions for them, and then you can ask them, and you can show them who you are. Don't be disappointed with them. Don't be angry with them. Don't be upset with them. Be sure that you thank them for the gift that they've given you, that you've been able to prosper and become who you are. Because when I look at them now, they are, I know they're teenagers, but I can see who they're going to be, and I'm very hopeful of who they're becoming.
How much contact do they have at this point with their biological family?
So there's none. When we adopted them, we did tell the family that we were open to having an open adoption, but we have not been contacted.
Oh.
So, and that was the other struggle, is how much do we tell them? We just don't know the factors on the other family, And so do they want to see the kids? I don't know. I don't want to tell my kids, okay, when you turn 18, you're going to go see your parent, And what if they don't, So it's hard, It's hard to protect them, but I get what they're wanting, but I don't know how to give that to them because I don't have the answer. There's no 100% certainty. You know?
And it's different for each kid's personality too.
Yes. And so what we've been telling them is, when the time is ready, and if you're wanting, then we would do what we can, But I think that's all that we can say at this point is, I just hope that they are in a good place, and that, that they will be at some point able to meet and be able to kind of answer any questions that they may have. That won't change the fact that there are kids. And if they feel like they want a relationship with them, that's great. Again, it goes back to, it doesn't have to be either or. You can have two sets of parents. You can have,
more people to love them.
Yeah.
That's what
it takes a village. It definitely takes a lot of family support, to become a successful person. So hopefully that would be good for them. And hopefully we're doing what we, need to do as parents to raise them and guide them and teach them and give them structure and love on them. And
we see you at church all the time. And like I said, y'all are one of your stories, one of the stories that, that inspired, partially inspired this podcast. It was like a little seed that was planted. Going through, so that connection with the Acts retreat, you saw the guys on the Acts retreat, and she signed you up. Did you say no? Did you try to get out of it, or?
Well, I think what happened is that first year that you all returned and you all were processed down the aisle, and then you sat there, and at the end of Mass, all y'all got up there and you started singing your theme song.
Yes.
And I remember telling Tina, I want to do that. It was about a year later, I think, or I guess maybe half a year later, when the announcement for the next Acts retreat came up, and thinking about work and all the things I had to do, I was, I think she kind of surprised me about it, and I was kind of interested, kind of excited, but at the same time, like, I have a lot of work to do. I don't know if I can really take off this time, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I remember when she brought me on Thursday and kind of dropped me off, and
Yeah.
And I remember
Gave him the boot, like, take him.
The bus ride out there was, I didn't want to be there. I was thinking about how am I going to get the job done while I'm here, because it's still Thursday, Friday, and but by the time I left, by the time I got back to St. Faustina, I was so blessed, so lifted up in my spirit. It was really good.
Now, you hadn't been on the Acts retreat at that point. Did you go after?
No, I've been on other women's retreat.
Uh-huh.
I just haven't been called to go to the women's Acts retreat.
It'll happen when it's meant to happen.
It's all in God's will. I definitely believe that, yes.
Now, y'all are, like we said earlier, y'all are involved in a bunch of different ministries at St. Faustina. What are the different ministries y'all are involved in?
Right now, I would say that I've taken a little bit of a backseat to volunteering.
Because the kids are in their teenage years? Is that what it is?
Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so I think right now I'm going through a little bit of a struggle.
Okay.
But whenever I can, if you need me to help mop the floor, take umbrellas, help, I'm there. But I just haven't been able to commit consistently to. But Anthony has been doing enough for both of us. So that's, I'll let him share.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself first. Yeah, we've had Marie Allendorf, who was on the show. She talked about that as well, how she had to take a year, and she called it the year of Marie, where she just focused on herself. So how about you? So you're picking up the slack.
Absolutely.
Well, I've been helping Emily with the RCIA for the youth, and then this past year I've been helping with the RCIA for the adults. I actually sponsored a young man. And then I've also, like Tina said, I'm in the pastoral council. So, and then I do the EM, the Eucharistic minister. And then...
He auditioned to be a lector?
Ah.
I did. I went up there and I had a chance to read, and it was interesting. I don't know how that will turn out, but...
And he's been... discerning about entering the deacon program.
Oh.
Which makes me nervous because
you got to take the classes too. Yeah.
Well, I don't feel like I'm deacon wife material.
Oh.
But I'm going to be open to God's plan. If that's where God takes our family, that's where he takes our family. But
you never know, because the deacons we've had on the show, the permanent deacons, they've said that they thought that they weren't deacon material. And
well, he's probably deacon material. I'm not deacon's wife material.
We'll see. And even if it doesn't work out, it's still going to be better for y'all. And that's what they said.
Yes. And that's the struggle. I think it's like we are volunteer people. We're church people.
Yes.
So we're never going to not be in church or active or help out wherever we can with whatever means we can with our time, our talent, our finances. So God's definitely blessed us to be at St. Faustina, definitely blessed us to meet people to help us during the times that we're struggling. And it's been great for us to give back we're part of the sponsorship couple for engaged couples. So we've helped 3 couples prepare for marriage. And so it's been really neat because we get so much out of it as we hope that we provided for them.
Yes, we do the marriage ministry and then also ACTS and the ACTS core team. So that's a recent one.
That's awesome. One thing I want to commend you about that I've seen in church is like how you share your Vietnamese culture with the kids. Because, I sometimes see them wearing the traditional attire. That's awesome. Is that something that your parents wanted you to do or you just felt it yourself?
Growing up, I really did not, I didn't care about those things. I didn't care about the Vietnamese culture very much. I didn't really put much thought into the Catholic faith. But miraculously, as you become a parent, all of a sudden you become your mom, And so I used to see my mom wear beautiful ao dais to church. And so I wanted to wear ao dais to church. And when they were younger, they were more open to wearing them. Now they're not so much. But and just doing things that my parents did that set that foundation. I was in church even though I didn't want to be in church. My kids are in church even when they don't want to be in church. Just trying to set that foundation. Just trying to honor my religion, my culture by wearing the ao dais and just because that's something that you do when you dress up. And I remember Father Dad saying when you go to church you should dress up. And so that's what.
How about you, Anthony? Your Italian heritage, is there anything that you or maybe your family has tried to pass down to the kids as well?
No. My mother's Bolivian.
Oh, is she?
And I don't know if I pass on any traditions, though. I don't think that. Yes, so she was born in Cochabamba, Bolivia.
Okay.
They migrated here when she was 10.
Wow. Wow, so it's not just Italian, it's Italian/Bolivian.
Yes, so Italian, Irish, Bolivian, Brazilian.
Okay.
So just much.
I just want to thank you guys so much for, coming on the show and telling your story. It's very inspirational. Hopefully there's, there are couples out there who are struggling and see this and are inspired.
Yeah, I mean, we've somehow find a way to make it work. I mean, we come from different cultural backgrounds. We came from different religious background. We just had a lot of different things going against us. Our infertility struggles. He's very academic. He likes to go to school, not so much. And so that was a struggle with him going to school all the time. But marriage is important. Growing up, my parents were divorced. They didn't marry for love. My siblings got married. They're all divorced. And so I kind of made a commitment that I'm not going to end up in divorce. And so as many times as I tell them, okay, divorce, let's just do it, I'm like, no, we gotta fight for it. And so we've learned different things and techniques that we've used to help us. We attend yearly retreats, couples retreat or seminars. And so we just trying to do what we can to fight for our marriage and stay connected and hopefully be an example for our kids so that when they have family that they'll know.
They'll be able to pass that on to their kids. Well, thank you again and God bless you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.